Welcome to Greenhouse Grower to Grower, the podcast where we talk to growers from across the greenhouse industry about market trends, innovation, their biggest challenges and opportunities, and more. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower. The Canadian Sphagnum Peat Moss Association represents companies that are actively involved in the extraction and processing of peat. CSPMA members are committed to responsible peatland management and sustainability, ensuring their practices meet high environmental and industry standards. In this episode, I was joined by my colleague Marisa Reyes for a discussion with CSPMA President Asha Hingorani, Vice President of Science and Research Partnership Stephanie Boudreau, and Communications Coordinator Charleen McCartney. We talked about the current peat situation in Canada and how members strive for sustainable peatland management. We also dispel some common myths and misconceptions about peat. Here's our conversation. So I want to start the conversation before we really get into the topics we were going to discuss, what each of your roles are within the Canadian Sphagnum Peat Moss Association. Let's start with Asha.
Sure. So my name's Asha Hingorani. I'm the president of the Canadian Sphagnum Peat Moss Association. CSPMA is the acronym, and you'll probably see that a lot on our materials and our website. I've been in the role for just over 4 years now, so still learning a lot about the industry, but happy to represent it.
Okay, awesome. Stephanie, what about you?
Yes, my name is Stephanie Boudreau. I'm the VP of Science and Research Partnership at the association. I've been working in peatlands for my entire career, starting in 1993 as a graduate student working in peatland restoration, and I've been working with the industry since 2012.
Awesome. Charleen?
Hi, my name is Charleen McCartney, and I am the communications coordinator for CSPMA. So my job involves, making sure that we're fighting kind of misinformation about peat, which I guess is something we'll talk about today, and just making sure that all of our communications to our members and to our external audiences are going well.
Okay, great.
So let's dive right in and talk about what the CSPMA is and the main roles it plays in our industry.
Sure thing. First, I guess, thank you for having us on. We are a follower and a reader of Greenhouse Grower, so it's always nice to connect in this way. So to answer your question, the CSPMA has been around for just over 37 years. We represent the peat producers in Canada that extract horticultural peat for food security and well-being, and I know we'll get into that a little bit later. We work for a board of directors that is represented by seven board of directors all across the country, and we have membership. 3 membership levels. We have a producer level, which is peat producers. We have bag suppliers, affiliate and associate members, which could be transportation, logistics, etc., that help to support the industry and what we do. Part of, in the last 37 years, we've kind of transitioned the industry or the association back, almost 40 years ago. It was more designed as a marketing association, but now it's really transitioned to advocacy, communication, and science and industry collaboration. So, and that's kind of represented in all the roles that we have in terms of the personnel that support the industry through the CSPMA.
Okay. And I know education is also a big part of what you guys do then?
Absolutely. I mean, we, through our communications and the fact that we've invested in science and research over the last 30 years, we're able to communicate those results through, education and educating not only, the stakeholders that are interested in the industry, but the political side, so politicians both at the federal and provincial level, as well as anyone it's curious or wants to know more about the industry. We have the science-based facts to help to support what we're saying.
Okay.
Maybe I could add that from the educational point of view, because of our partnership with universities
Mhm.
and our engagement in research, we also contribute indirectly to the education of graduate students specialized in peatlands or peat research.
Okay. Okay. I know that's really important too now, as so many segments of the industry look to the next generation of leadership, whether it's, from the grower standpoint, whether it's from a supplier standpoint. So it's really important that you're focusing in it on that as well. So that's great. Um,
Mm.
and we'll talk a lot, moving forward in the conversation here about, some of the long-term implications for what's happening in the market and how that works through producers and then both addressing both grower needs as well. But um, before we get to that point, I want to kind of look at where we stand now. If you can give just like a brief overview of the most recent peat harvest and any particular highlights that we should be looking at as we transition into the next couple of years.
Sure. Well, I'll start with the 2025 season, which has just passed. I think it's important to recognize that we extract peat in Canada during the spring, throughout the summer, and sometimes into the fall, depending on what the conditions are. So extraction could start as early as May and then go all the way possibly to October if we're still having hot, dry conditions that allow for peat extraction.
Yeah.
So now, if your readers were paying attention, they would have seen the series that you guys posted, a three-part series that you guys posted over the last month. In that, we detailed the extraction figures from across Canada. And it was a fair season. I think, in some parts of the country, it's in maybe the parts of Quebec where we have a large amount of extraction taking place, production rather. That it started off as kind of a rainy season, so the extraction may have started a little bit later. And then also in the later part of the summer, so in August, New Brunswick had really bad wildfires. So this impacted the Crown lands, and there was a lot of Crown land closures in New Brunswick, and a lot of peat producers extract on Crown lands. So there was rules and regulations they had to follow around that. So, um, as I explained in the piece that we detailed to you earlier this month, there were some delays in terms of being able to extract and transport their peat. However, we worked with the New Brunswick government to ensure that we were following the correct rules and regulations, and they understood the implications around restricting um, our sector to extraction in other areas. So again, it was a pretty fair season. Um, I'd say, I mean, it's really weather dependent. If for some reason next in 2026 we have a rainy season all summer, that's going to impact the production levels and extraction levels of the year. You may have also been, if you're kind of following the international outlook, I know that the Baltics had a really rainy season this year. It was and it's kind of a trend that they've been following, unfortunately. So, you know, the demand for growing media continues to grow, and the demand for peat continues to grow. So, obviously, this is, if we have a good season, that's a good thing.
Okay. And I should point out that series that you mentioned a couple of minutes ago. For anybody who's listening to this, you can just go to greenhousegrower.com and you can find that full series, which, as you mentioned, is packed with information. I remember talking to Marisa when she was putting the article together, and she was telling me how much you guys talk about so many different things. And then we went to work on the print issue and realized we don't have enough space to cover everything. So let's put it out online and let's share as much as we can with the entire industry. So we were happy to be able to do something like that. So I know, Marissa, you were going to ask about sustainability and restoration trends.
Yeah, we talk a lot about sustainability and responsible restoration of peatlands. And I'm curious, how does the CSPMA work with companies in the industry to facilitate this?
So what I would say is maybe surprising to most people, or it was a surprise to me when I joined the industry, is just how collaborative the sector really is. So I'd say that, CSPMA is kind of the bridge between a lot of the companies, but they're all kind of working together when it comes to sustainability. And so we bring them kind of together around the science that kind of helps them with that piece. But restoration itself isn't really something that's like left to chance since it's a regulated process.
Right.
So, for example, the producers, they can't just go open a new bog tomorrow and start extracting from it. It's a very lengthy process, and it would involve them having a restoration plan in place before they were even permitted and allowed to touch that land in the first place. So on that basis, it's kind of like an ongoing process. But in terms of, again, how the industry collaborates with scientists, they helped to, fund the development of the moss layer transfer technique, which is used to restore the peatlands in Canada and now a little bit around the world as well. And so that only really came about because of that collaboration aspect within the industry and within science in Canada. And then maybe another part that kind of helps with the consistency between the peat producers is that around 80% of the industry is a member certified by the Veriflora Responsibly Managed Peatlands program. And so that is a third-party sustainability certification that's run through SCS Global. And that kind of maintains that all of these peat producers that subscribe to it or that are certified by it are going to be checking the same boxes when it relates to different aspects of sustainability, whether that's economic, whether that's social, whether that's environmental. So they're all kind of working out of the same playbook when it comes to that. So that helps to kind of keep everything aligned as well. I don't know if Stephanie, you want to add anything on here?
Maybe I can add a little bit about the restoration, peatland restoration. So it's something that has been developed through long-term research with the Peatland Ecology Research Group, through many experiments in greenhouse and then applied in the field, and they finally succeed to develop a methodology with the industry. And this involves 8 steps. The first one is having a good planning for the peatland restoration. You need to have the characteristics of the land to be restored. Then you need to prepare the surface to be restored. You need a donor site where you will collect plant material, just the top layer that you will collect and then spread over the site to be restored with a ratio of 1:10. Then you need some straw mulch on top of that and a slight phosphorus fertilizer, sorry. And you also need to block the drainage ditches to re-wet the peatland. And with that in place, you have the plant's diaspores in place, you have the moistures in place. The plant can reestablish, and we see typical peatland plant reestablished after 3 to 5 years. We see also greenhouse gas function returning to a sequestration function between 10 to 15 years. And we see the hydrological condition of a natural bog also coming slowly but surely. So it's really a method that allows us to return the peatland to a functional ecosystem. So to remove our footprint from the landscape point of view.
Okay.
Yeah. I think if you don't mind, I'll just add to that. This restoration method that Stephanie's just explained, the moss layer transfer technique, it's not only it was developed in Canada, but it's also being used in other ways across the world to restore peatlands. So there's a lot of us travel across to educate and inform and attend meetings. And when we go to, let's say, Ireland or Europe or any place, it's sometimes called the Canadian method versus the moss layer transfer technique, which is kind of, it makes us feel good too, because it's Canadian science that's really helping to be part of this solution to meet our climate change goals.
Okay.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. Natural peat formation is really slow. It's about 1 meter of peat can take about 1,000 years, I believe. So I'm curious, is restoration much faster than that? And if so, what is the years it would take? Is it like 10 to 20 years to restore an area?
Well, it depends on your definition of restoration. So it's dependent on the goal of the restoration. Our goal is to put back a functional ecosystem. So the peatlands that has the function in the landscape, the sink function. But of course, we cannot put back the peat deposit that has been for use in horticulture. This takes a long time, as you just mentioned. So, but by putting back the function of sequestration, it will take thousands of years, but then it's still removing CO2 from the atmosphere. And the peat is used as other benefits elsewhere to grow plants and grow food for the people around the world. So there's an impact there, but the benefits is above the impact. And we're doing everything that is possible to restore it as fast as possible, to bring back this function as quickly as possible.
I want to ask about challenges in a second, but before I do that, I want to take a step back to one of the things that you mentioned, Charleen, when it comes to Veriflora certification. So how then can members translate that certification to the conversations that they have with folks in the industry to kind of show them, we're doing things the right way and we're certified because of this?
Yeah, so there is actually a logo that's prepared for the program, and it has a kingfisher bird on it, and then it has some text with it. I'm sure I can get you a copy of that. But it has some text that's describing kind of the program goals and why it's important for members or for peat producers to kind of be a part of this program, and for that bag of peat that you're looking at to kind of have this certification on it.
Yeah.
So I would say that's like a good marketing way that they can kind of make sure that their growers are able to identify that they are certified. Other than that, I would say also, Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong about this, it's the producer themselves as a company that gets certified, right? So if you're purchasing peat from, let's say, a Premier Tech or a Berger, and we know that they're certified, then you would know that peat itself is certified.
Exactly, and they have audits annually, so it's quite constraining. And the auditor will take 3 years to visit all the sites of this company, including the restoration sites, the operation sites, the plants, and the mixing facilities, for example.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'd also add that producers are always looking for ways to improve the certification. We just went through a second iteration of it, and I believe it's published now. So, but it's something we're always looking to improve. So it's not it's not a one and done kind of thing. It's something that you want to kind of improve your sustainability and responsible management goals in relations to, I don't know, plastics, community engagement, etc. So it's something that is constantly being reviewed and improved.
Okay.
And
Well, that's important too. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, maybe just to kind of add on, I'd say that the producers that are verified, they're proud of it. So they're probably going to kind of tell you about it as well, because not every single peat producer in Canada is certified, but a bulk of them are, and they're happy to do so.
Yeah. Well, it's nice too that, as you said, Asha, it's not a one-time thing. You get the certification, but then you're showing we didn't do this to get a label. We're doing this because we're continuing to invest in the future of this industry. So I think that's really important.
And I'll add, Brian, that our big retail chains like Home Depot, Lowe's, Canadian Tire, here up north, we educate them on the certification as well, because like many of your listeners, there's a lot of myths and miscommunication about peat and the peat industry out there. So, kind of showcasing and educating them about the certification is a way to show them that the industry is uh, responsibly managing the resource and the ecosystem.
Sure. I do want to ask too about some of the challenges that members might face as they go through the restoration process, and how you work with them to help navigate through some of those challenges.
Well, there is knowledge transfer that needs to be done between the researchers and the industry. Industry know how to apply things in the field, in this special field that is a peatland, and researcher has answer some of the questions. So it's important to link them together and have some kind of a knowledge transfer workshop to go through those challenges. Some of those challenges can be the weather, because it's a wetland. You need the proper condition to do mechanical work. You also need some input like straw mulch. Sometimes, some years, the straw mulch may be more difficult to find. You need fertilizer too. You need a downside. So, but with a good planning, usually those challenges are easily overcome. So it's more finding the proper window to do it, finding the good input to do it, and then your everything should be fine.
Yeah. And I think it's an important point to note that restoration is a legal obligation. So, the fact that we lease a peatland to extract from it, producers can't just, leave that land after they're done extraction. They're legally obliged to restore it in Canada. And funds are set aside before they even start extracting to make sure that, let's say a company goes bankrupt. Those funds are already set aside to do the restoration. So, um, I think that's something we're very proud of. And I know when we go talk to our governments in Canada, we use that as an example because I'm not familiar with all the industries and their practices in Canada, but I am aware that, they do look to the Canadian peat industry as an example of that.
And kind of tied into the challenge side, I know, and Marisa, you can ask about the situation with tariffs and logistics, transportation right now.
Everyone's favorite topic. um, so, how might tariff policies and logistics or transportation issues affect access by the U.S. growers to Canadian peat?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. And you know what? Like, I have to say, over the last year, this has been the issue. This has been the number one concern of peat producers and growers on both sides of the border. We just have, well, first things first, there are no tariffs on peat or peat based products right now. So that's a great thing. And that's universal. So it's not just from Canada, the US, it's also any peat coming to the US from Europe, for example. So just that's a fact. I mean, it could change tomorrow. We don't know. But right now, as of November 25th, there are no tariffs on peat or peat based products. But like I said, this was the issue that was a concern because at the beginning of the year, there was talk about, putting, let's say, a 35% tariff on peat. Now, the US is our number one market. Over 90% of our product goes to the US, to growers and to the retail sector. So about 70% goes to professional growers and about 30% goes to retail. So as you can understand, that would be a big hit to both sides of the businesses if this tariff were to be placed on peat or peat-based products. Um, we actually just held our AGM annual general meeting in Montreal this year, and I had invited American Hort, which is your listeners may be familiar with them. They're a large trade association that represents growers and other industries within the horticultural sector in the U.S. The CSPMA worked closely with them to ensure our messages were aligned. And we had early communication with them when we first got wind of there could potentially be tariffs on our products. So we worked closely with them to make sure that, like I said, our messages were aligned, our communications and our facts were clear to both policy decision makers on both sides of the border. So I think that collaborator approach was certainly a benefit. And I know going forward, right now, both countries or all three countries are engaged in the renegotiations of the USMCA, or in Canada, we call it CUSMA. So the CSPMA and its members did just put forward a submission to the Canadian government on the operations of the USMCA and how it can improve. And I know that American Horn and its members also did the same thing. But as we were developing that submission, we did work together and had that collaborated approach. And going forward, it's the best thing we'll do.
And that's great to being able to look ahead of the challenges that may be coming and being able to proactively respond, when an issue does come up. We talked a little bit ago about efficiency from the sustainability side of things. Also want to find out about efficiency on the technology side of things. Do you see members of CSPMA investing in new infrastructure, new technology to, better facilitate the processes that they go through?
I guess I'll start and maybe the others can jump in, but absolutely. I think, the industry's been around for about 100 years in Canada. So even looking back 100 years ago, we extracted peat in a very different way. We use block cutting, and now we've transitioned to like a vacuum harvester. But the industry is always looking for ways of improvement and ensuring that our technology is up to date, and we're being conscious of the emissions we're producing within their own facilities. The Canadian government recently announced in Budget 2025 money for companies to help with energy efficiency technologies. So I think producers might look at that and say, hey, this is the time to invest in a more efficient tractors or updating their plans on making sure their, I guess, facilities are up to date with the most up to date technology. So
Sure.
I think it's something that's always constantly improving. I wish I could give you specific examples, but I think the best would be to you know to visit a producer and see how they are using using the resources.
Maybe about infrastructure. If a peat producer open a new bog in a new region, that will come with a new infrastructure as well. Road, a plant, storage, location, etc. So it goes with the development of new resource. And also at a smaller scale, during extraction, we have project looking at technology for better sedimentation and sedimentation pounds, so water quality thing. So we're looking a little bit more deeper into those questions with research project. And also more from the technique used to harvest peat, there is some innovation from some companies, but then it's more company specific. So it's more competitive topic that at the CSPMA we don't necessarily address. It's more specific to each of the companies.
Sure. Well, and I know that, as Marisa was working with the three of you on the article that ran and the series that ran this month, I was kind of working on a companion piece as well, where I talked to members within the industry and asked some of these same questions, particularly, how are you investing in the future of what you're doing? What types of research and partnerships are you building? And that includes the work that they're doing with an organization like yours to advance the industry. So, it's great to see everybody on the same page, and obviously doing things in different ways because every company is going to be different. And, there's always the competitive issue to think about, but everybody's got one clear goal, it sounds like, in terms of, looking ahead for the industry.
So we had briefly mentioned earlier about myths and misinformation around the peat industry. So I'm curious what message you would like to convey to growers or media companies, and any myths that you would like to clarify about the role of peat in the industry moving forward.
Well, how much time do we have? But I think maybe Marissa, I'll answer your first question, and maybe I'll get Charleen and Stephanie to just jump in afterwards. But I think the number one message I want media companies to know is that before, and this goes for anything really, before publishing, before putting out facts out there, make sure you're talking to the right people so that you actually have the facts instead of just Googling and trying to figure it out yourself. You guys are good journalists. You did the research, you talk to the right people, but we've absolutely talked to, we've had to correct a lot of misinformation out there from, boutique or smaller journalistic, publications. But, we always try to have that conversation with them. So if there is misinformation out there, that's published before we have the opportunity to speak with them, we'll write them a letter and provide the correct information and the facts, and then we'd hope that they would correct it, or at least have a conversation with us about it, so that in the future they do have the right information going forward. And it's not like we're trying to force industry views or anything like that. But
Sure.
we're putting forward science-based facts. So in the end, you can make up your own conclusion, but we want to make sure that you have the correct information.
Maybe I would jump in and have my top three. My top three. is our footprint. Our footprint, we haven't discussed about our footprint, but it's really minimal. So the footprint from the past and the present is 0.03% of all the Canadian peatland. So it's really a minimal footprint in North America compared to Europe, for example. So that has implication on the way people view this. Restoration is possible. Some people doubt about restoration. Restoration is really possible to put back a functional peatland in place after peat extraction. And the third thing is greenhouse gas. You can bring back the carbon sequestration function after restoration, but also when you use the peat, it's not all decomposing. It's not disappearing in the atmosphere, and often the bad information comes from the fact that people think that once the peat is extracted, it's all decomposed in the atmosphere, which is not the case. It's carbon that will stay. If you plant your plant in your garden, it will immobilize the carbon in the soil of your garden. So there's a benefits to it. It's carbon that is moving other soils. So there's benefits to grow plants, and the carbon is still there.
I'll just add a final point there. From my perspective, just kind of being in it a lot with the misinformation is just perhaps that within the sector, like we're all on the same team, is one point, and just we'll go further collaborating together. And then maybe the second would just be that it's not as simple as like peat is bad and alternative media is good. And I think that that's what a lot of people are looking to be told, and for it to just be that simple of like, okay, peat's bad, so we'll just switch to X product and now we're good to go on sustainability. It's the box is checked, we can move on. Because every material has an environmental impact and a social and economic impact. And based on the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish, you might choose a different media component. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's not that simple.
So I was going to say, I really like that you guys go about it as writing a letter to give more information. I think that's great. And I imagine it can be kind of frustrating because you can't see everything that's out there. Is there a team, or how do you guys go ahead and find misinformation so that you can correct it?
Yeah. So the team is the three of us. So obviously we have tools within Google and whatever to monitor things, but we also rely on our members to share information with us. But I think and Charlene can certainly speak to this in more detail, but we have developed a robust communication plan within the CSPMA to be very proactive and reach out to audiences. So, for example, I'll give you some of the work we've been doing recently. We've been being a lot more proactive with U.S. Universities and universities that have a horticultural department. Charlene will do research on professors and see, if they're skeptical around peat or, positive around it. But whatever direction they're in, we still want to have that conversation with them so that they know where to find the information if needed. So that's just one example, but we have kind of a list of key target audiences. But you're absolutely right; we're not going to get everything, and a lot of the times we will be on the defensive versus the reactive.
Charlene?
Yeah, I was just going to add to Asha's point there. I think like a big part of it for us too is maybe just trying to amplify the voice of peat champions sometimes, because we are such a small team and we don't really have the resources to, talk to every single person who's maybe a little bit apathetic about the use of peat moss. We kind of want to make sure that we're amplifying those champions' voices for us so that they can kind of get to their audiences. And, in the end, it might all come back to us. And that's what we hope, that people, trust CSPMA as kind of the hub of knowledge on this topic. But we're just a, small team. So we really do rely on kind of our champions.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think one of the last questions we have, actually, the second to last question is, if somebody wants to learn more about the organization, what can they do?
I'd say they should probably visit peatmoss.com. It's our relatively new website that I worked, very hard on pulling together all these facts so that someone can just go on the website and, if they were to read it start to finish, they'd have a pretty good sense of what's going on with Canadian peat afterwards, I'd hope. And there's even some educational videos and fact sheets that are linked on there too that I would say are a really good resource to look at. And also some just FAQs that if you want some quick, combating the misinformation that you see online, you're going to get it there.
Sure. I like those FAQs and be able to allow members to actively combat misinformation too. That's great. That's great. So when you look to the future and we've been really focused at Greenhouse Grower, especially in the last couple of years on where the future lies for all segments of the industry. I'll ask each of you, I will ask each of you, what are you most excited about when it comes to this sector of the industry that you're in, when it comes to the future of this industry? What are you most excited about?
I would say for me, since I'm still relatively new to the industry, I've only been with CSPMA for about a year. I personally am just excited to kind of keep learning and seeing all the innovation, especially around sustainability and maybe where the conversation with that will go. Before this, I was in the agriculture sector, and what I noticed there that was lacking was really the lack of data to support sustainability claims, whereas the horticulture industry and the peat moss industry, we really do have that science to back up what we're claiming. So I think that we're well positioned for the future, and I'm really interested to kind of see how we tell that story moving forward.
I'm excited about the new research, new project, new collaboration, new network. So that is in front of us still. So it's a never-ending story because more you search, more you find, more questions you have. So I'm excited about future research and collaboration.
I say my answer is a combination of both, but also, both comments from Stephanie and Charleen. But I'd say also, anytime we speak to a politician or just a regular Canadian or anyone, there's this lack of understanding of what the industry is. We're a natural resource sector in Canada, and it's a sector that I think Canadians and North Americans should be very proud of. Um, you know, you'll read on our website that we've been collaborating with um, researchers for over 30 years. That's a great success story. And I want, the Canadian government and I want the provincial governments to champion that. I think, there's the media, growing media rather will be, the need for growing media will be increasing in demand over by more than 50% in the next number of years. And I think that peat has a strong role to play there. Uh, so I want people to understand it, do the research, um, be curious, ask questions. And, that's what we're here. And the researchers are there to answer those questions. But in the end, I think, we will, my goal and my mandate is to make sure that we're an industry that's around for generations to come. And we wouldn't be here today if we didn't invest in the work that we have been doing over the last 30 years.
Thanks for joining us. You can learn more at greenhousegrower.com. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and please leave us a rating as it helps other podcast listeners find the show.